Angelo. It's always a privilege to have you on the mother of all talk shows, especially in an auspicious week like the one we've just had. What first attracted Henry Kissinger at the age of 100 to fly all the way to China? What's your take on it?
I think even though Henry Kissinger is a war criminal, and I'm not very much of a fan of him, but it seems like he might be a voice of reason, and he might actually negotiate something with China. What the US has been doing is putting pressure somehow, maybe for negotiation on a bailout, because what people tend to forget is that one of the main problems that the US has, and this is related to the fact that they had the privilege of printing whatever amount of currency they had, because it's the US dollar is a global currency. But what the problem the US has is a debt of over $31 trillion, and I think there's a possibility that maybe the US might be actually negotiating some kind of bailout, because that could be a solution out of war. Because if the US were to lose the US dollar hegemony, it would be just dramatic. But not only for the US. Keep in mind that nobody has any interest in having the US collapse. The whole world would suffer out of this. And also China. Its economy is closely related to the US, although China has been actually, they risk what they call decoupling, and they're risking for a while. There's a diversification towards South America with the global South, with Africa. But China is very pragmatic. They don't want war, and actually they still want to trade with the US. It's not of China's interest to have the US collapse. He wants a multipolar world. There's a new world order that's going to be built up, and I think we might be in a situation where negotiations are being done. I like to compare. There was a meeting of BRICS a few months ago, and I like to compare it to the Yalta meeting. It was when the Yalta meeting was when the war was not over yet, but they were actually starting to prepare the world of tomorrow. What would be the new world order? And BRICS is part of it. So somehow now, maybe what Kissinger might be doing is trying to set up some conditions how we could do this transition. But again, this is a speculation. We don't know what happened at that meeting. But the main problem the US has right now is this huge debt that it cannot repay. And if the US loses its US dollar hegemony, that could be dramatic. It would be just disastrous because it would be like a hyperinflation, huge unemployment. So that is my speculation, but it's hard to say. That's maybe my wish too, because we don't want to have a war, which would be ultimately a mutual destruction, because nobody wins on the Third World War when you have a nuclear superpower like China, Russia, and the US facing each other.
Well, many people will find it incredible that you and I are credibly discussing the possibility that China will bail out the United States of America. The American Bretton Woods era would very obviously be dead and buried were that to happen. And yet, given the China's holdings of US bonds, China could destroy the US bond market. It's already been decoupling and de-risking itself from the US bond market, from its holdings in American dollars, but it could simply sink the whole place by dumping its remaining bonds on the market and totally destroy the ability of the US to repay its debts. So it is a credible speculation that you are making. I merely press you on this point. Janet Yellen was there just a couple of weeks ago, kowtowing, bent over double with Chinese officials, apparently believing that Chinese officials like people kowtowing to them. which of course meant she got her countries mixed up. Blinken was there just a few weeks before that. Why would you need to send a 100-year-old man to negotiate with China? That's very dramatic, isn't it?
No, absolutely. It's a sign that the US is desperate. I think they're putting pressure. They're trying to do regime change in Russia. They've been trying for a long time. They've been trying in China to destabilize China through Tibet, through Xinjiang, through the whole region. And this is maybe it's part of the negotiation of, on this bailout, on this construction of the New World Order. Maybe. But again, I think there are probably two camps in the US. You have the radicals that would go all the way just to direct confrontation. And some people are just realizing, well, you just imagine, NATO cannot beat Russia, which has not even 10% of NATO expenditure in defense. So just imagine, as you said just before, how many wars the US has lost? The last war the U.S. lost, the won was Grenada. They lost all their wars, and it's just madness. It's like Einstein said, madness is keeping doing the same result, the same things, and expecting different results. That is what is happening. So it is very hard to say. And again, I think that what is happening in the US is their own system, their political system is extremely unstable. People are, they've been fooled for many times. They're in a vicious circle of electing and regretting, and people are just realizing that they've been fooled. You can fool people so many times, but at the end of the day, they don't support their own system. They don't support the media, which are telling that their own people that they have the best system in the world, that they should teach the world and so on. But facts are there. Just to give you a few figures, there's probably 30% of people in the US that actually trust their own government and their political system. And it's such an embarrassment because if you compare with China, you have 90 to 95% of people that trust and support the political system. You have 80% of people in Russia that actually support Putin. And when I give you those figures, George, those figures come from Western sources, very biased, but they cannot lie. And you don't need much. You just go into the streets of Moscow, you just go into the streets of Shanghai. You talk to those people. I've seen it. I was in the first time in China. I arrived in China 30 years ago, and I saw the reality. It was very backward. It was poor. People were hungry, and people are still hungry. They are a hard-working force. The mentality is, it's a very tough mentality, and they come up, they had tough times. If you look at Chinese history, now what they want is prosperity. They want tangible results. It's a different culture. Not only the culture is different, but when you look at the profile of their leaders, they are engineers. They come from science, math, technology, engineers. So those people, they create tangible things. Now look at the leaderships we have in the West. They're, the youngsters. They are in their 40s, like Macron, the very telegenics, Trudeau, and so on. Background, well, Macron is an ex-banker. He's going to do a revolving door. He's a Rothschild banker. He came from there. He was pre-selected by the elites. He goes into politics. Then he goes back to being a banker. That's what's going to happen. He's going to be multi-millionaire, and he's going to make his bank, the Rothschild bank or whatever bank he's going to work with, even richer. The profile of those people, Western leaders, are lawyers, bankers, and they do not produce anything. And not only they don't produce anything, they're out of touch of when it comes to the reality of what people want. They are not following their voters' wishes. They are following the orders of whoever funded their campaigns. So those are the problems. We really need to get our house in order. And there's one point I want to say, but because we are being criticized, people like me that are have been in the West for a long time, as being traitors, as they say, well, I love China more than my country and so on. It is not. It is not. And I would. My position is very similar to Scott Ritter's position when it comes to loving my country. Why do I denounce my country? Because I do love my country. That is a responsibility. And I think I love more my country than people that are blindly following the mistakes that their country are doing. And do I love China more than my country? No. But I do envy China. I envy their system because I see what they've done for their people. And when I see tangible result, prosperity, because ultimately it's about, it's not about promises. It's not about selling dreams. I have a dream and so on. Okay, you are going to touch emotions. By emotions, does it feed you? Does it bring you food on the table? It doesn't. Chinese want tangible results, and that's what the West wants. But what they do in the West, they've done everything to suppress the class consciousness, to suppress the reality by doing lots of diversions. They are dividing people over races. They are dividing people over genders. And that's the usual divide and conquer. What in reality, there's two classes, the upper class of the 1% and the rest. And they are so afraid that the rest realizes, they get this class consciousness and they realize that, oh, you know what? We need to unite together and we need to bring back democracy. What is the meaning of democracy? Because the West keeps on hammering the global South. Oh, democracy, democracy. Well, go back to the meaning. Demos kratos, power to the people. The rules of the games need to be written by the people. Give back power to the people. And ultimately, you know what? It's not about labels. We need to be extremely careful. And I think you've mentioned this quite a few times. Stop putting labels. The ism, socialist, capitalist, and so on. You put people into boxes. In reality, there's two classes. The upper class of the 1% and the rest. And we are all the same. And we need to regain this power. And guess what? You go to China. That's a power by the people, for the people, of the people. And again, it's not the fact that in the West you have you cast a ballot doesn't make it a democracy, because the candidates you are going to elect were pre-selected by the elites, and the rules of the game were written by the elites. This is why what you have when you look at France, that movement, the Yellow Vest, was a very smart and mature movement. And they were actually working about the foundation of democracy was sovereignty, regaining sovereignty, direct democracy, so referendum rights, and actually educating people about what is a real democracy. Because see, people educated are very dangerous. You give education, that's a weapon, because people start realizing, and they don't want that. They are going to do diversion, to distract you. Netflix, drugs, alcohol, you are enslaved by your job, you're in a survival mode, and you do not have time because you're on survival mode. When do you have like 10 minutes just to study, and to look at your own problem? And now what the West is doing, you're going all the way 10,000 of miles to China, and you're pointing out China bad, and you're even investing $500 million to demonize China. This is a loser's game.
And the propaganda fund, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was a long one. George, you stop it. We need to go back.
Not at all. I was just going to make this point. The Spanish government that appears to have fallen today will be remembered for two things. First of all, Joseph Borrell's concept of the European Union being a garden and the rest of the world being a jungle. And the second thing, their only parliamentary achievement will turn out to have been an overhaul of the sexual offences legislation in Spain. An overhaul which led to the premature release of hundreds of rapists and pedophiles and perverts of all kinds, and an overhaul of the law on bestiality. The Spanish socialist government changed the law so that having sex with an animal will no longer be a criminal offense as long as the animal was not harmed as a result of the experience. That's what they call an achievement, Angelo, as compared to the achievements, material achievements of the government in China. Last word to you, my friend.
Well, I think when it comes to European politics, it's always very important to understand what is this project of Europe. The European project was actually a CIA initiative. You know, Jean Monnet is considered the father of Europe, was on a CIA payroll. You can actually follow, you know, there are a few politicians in France like François Asselineau and Marie-France Garot. They actually they have exposed this project. What was Europe about? So when it comes to Europe, you know, I have only one single condition. You know, if you want to choose someone, a politician, you need a politician that is actually advocating for exiting Europe, because the first preconditions for democracy is sovereignty. The countries in Europe need to regain their sovereignty because all the decisions are in Brussels to people that you are not electing and that are actually following the orders of the thousands of lobbyists in Brussels. Whoever you choose, it's all there. They don't have rooms. You know, if you are president in let's say Macron, you don't have any rooms for deciding. All the decisions are made there, and it's just what you do. It's just locally some fine tuning. And the project of Europe is a completely destruction of nation state. They are going to do it through immigration and so on. This, you know, and also I'm not even talking about this social engineering of deconstruction of human being. You know, it's a whole project which is extremely evil. And you mentioned pedophilia. Well, we are going to legalize into the direction of legalizing pedophilia. It is extremely evil, and they call themselves progressive. You know, it's not. We need to fight this because it's extremely evil. And again, you know, it's past the limit. I mean, animals, kids. No way. We need to go out in the streets. We need to fight this.